John's Gospel, chapter 14, verse 15. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. In the name of God, the one who loves, the one who bears love, the one who is love. Amen. I'd like to rerun an old sermon, but with a difference. I've found in recent years, slightly to my surprise, that it can sometimes be amazingly productive to say out loud the very opposite of the obvious thing I'd expect to say in a sermon and just see how it sounds. And often that opposing statement turns out not to sound wrong or wicked, but actually it sheds a different colour, a different light on the same idea. For instance, how liberating it is after a lifetime of trying to be patient in prayer, when you suddenly discover it's okay to be downright impatient and grumpy in prayer, and how much further that gets you. That kind of opposite. Well, the sermon I'd like to rerun, which you've all heard from any number of preachers, is the one about the different kinds of love mentioned in the Greek of the New Testament. C.S. Lewis, in his book The Four Loves, paved the way, and we preachers have been following ever since. Let me list the four loves, summarise that sermon that you've heard from umpteen preachers' lips, and then try to say something different. First then, storge, or storge, depending how you pronounce your Greek, which is the natural affection we feel without any effort or deliberation. It's most commonly used of the love of parents and children. That bond that grips us at the moment of birth, our birth or our children's, with no decision, no artifice, no conscious choice about it. Second, eros, which is the romantic or physical love experienced by what nowadays we would call a couple. And most people who are members of couples tell you that it isn't the result of a decision or a conscious choice. They couldn't help it. Hence, I suppose, that metaphor of falling into that kind of love. Third, philia, the strong bond of friendship, the feeling we have for the people we choose to have around us, the people with whom we populate our feelings, the people we want to care for and we hope they want to care for us. And that's probably the love that most involves choice and deliberate action. It's probably the one that's most within our control. And fourth, agape, the word used dozens and dozens of times in the New Testament, used quite a lot in Greek translations of the Old Testament and used hardly ever at all in classical Greek before that. It's the word chosen by New Testament writers like Paul for the love that starts in God, pours from God to us, and characterises then our particularly Christian love for God and for each other. It's like a river pouring into a pool where you're the pool, and then overflowing from there down a waterfall on its way towards the sea. It's the word that's used in today's text. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. It's the word that's used like a percussion rhythm in the hymn to love in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's the word used in the Sermon on the Mount when we're told to love even our enemies. But it's a love that comes from God. We are capable of loving with this love only because we are loved with this love, not from some standing start of our own effort, not like philia. The traditional sermon on the four loves goes along lines something like this. With all due respect to Lewis, the preacher acknowledges that all four exist and there's nothing bad about any of them, and perhaps even says, as he does, that in a healthy life they are all bound together. But one by one, they are written off as not quite being the real Christian deal, except, of course, for agape. Storge is dismissed because the term on its own isn't used in the New Testament, except in the negative, in the condemnation of those who are heartless, in places like Romans chapter 1, using a word there that you might render astorgic. Eros just embarrasses the church as we struggle to work out how much of the Bible's sexual mores are really timeless and how much of them are culturally contextual, and then we weaponize our answer to the question against each other. But in the 4 love sermons, it's easier because it's just a matter of saying, of course, that that's not what we mean by our love for God, is it? Philia gets a better treatment in the classic version of this sermon because quite a lot of good can come out of it. When Jesus on the lake shore asked Peter if he loved him, Peter used this word, not the agape one, in his reply. But the preacher delivers the knockout blow by pointing out that it's not enough to have the kind of love you have for your friends. Jesus said you had to go further and have the kind of love you have for your enemies. And that can only be agape, because we can only manage it at all with God's help, with God's kind of love. And there usually endeth that sermon. I stopped there for a moment as a helicopter went overhead. I thought about re-recording the bit where that noise started, and then I realised that the helicopter was on its way to Ninewells Hospital, which is just about 4 miles that way, so I thought I'd leave it in. Anyway, where was I? Yes, I hear you think I know that stuff about love. I know, get on with it. Tell me something that will provoke me because you said you would. Well, I'll do better than that. I'll tell you 2 things, and I'll tell you them as concisely as I can, and I'll leave you to amplify them from your own experience. Thing number 1, any one of the 4 may be how you love God at this particular moment. And I think God is okay with that. It may simply be storge. By that I mean, it may be that you are so exhausted or traumatized or disillusioned or grief-stricken that you are not able to rustle up anything more than the most basic feelings lying at the bottom of your heart. Right now, emotionally, you cannot do more than put one foot in front of the other. You cannot pray with any sense of achievement. You're an automaton, and spiritual gymnastics could not be further from your mind. God sees that, and right now that will do. And you're not letting anyone down, and you're not letting God down. Today, that's your thing. God bless you. It may be eros. There's a certain kind of worship, and I dare say a certain kind of worshipper, for whom there is a desire for God that cannot be expressed with any other kind of love. And that is so not me. And my head shuts down when I find myself in that kind of service or singing that kind of chorus. But for as long as the church sings the chorus that contains the line, "You are my Lord and my heart's desire," or the one right next to it in Mission Praise with the line, "Your love has melted my heart," or one page earlier, the one that says, "No other love can satisfy," then you have to concede that if in God's love all things are holy, then who am I to clutch my pearls over other people's spirituality? It may be philia, like Jesus' love for his friend Lazarus, like Peter's love for Jesus. This week has been Christian Aid Week, which this year has had to go digital. Traditionally in our charge, we have a coffee morning in somebody's home in Abernight at the end of the week. But that didn't happen yesterday, of course. If philia is about choosing to love as the best and highest kind of friend, the way I defined it earlier, would you think, please, of going on to the Christian Aid website and making a donation equal to what you would have spent and given to that cause this week in ordinary times? There's nothing second best or less than holy about that, and you don't even need to be a Christian to do it. And then agape, the kind of human love that is God's love overflowing because we receive way more of it than we need for ourselves, or something like that. It's the love that makes us do things no one else would do. It's the love that makes us speak up for God's creation as God's creation, not just as our planet home. It's the love that makes us willing to suffer ridicule or harm for pointing out God's glory. It's the love that enables us to forgive and accept and rehabilitate those who would never make it through our modern world's blame culture and scapegoating mentality. Any one of these four may be what keeps your Christian heart beating today, and any one of them, or more than one, may be missing at the moment. And I think God is okay with that. And thing number two, the authorized version of the Bible, the one on which most of you were brought up, translates John 14 verse 15 as, "If ye love me, keep my commandments." The words of the introit we heard earlier. Modern translations of the verse handle the Greek a little differently and translate it as, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." And for me, those are a world apart. The first reminds me of a kind of petulant spouse who says, "If you love me, you'll do X or Y," as a kind of a challenge, slightly questioning whether the love exists, and so putting it to a practical proof. The newer translation understands agape better, I think. If that love of God is cascading through you without you being in control of it, then Christ's commandments will be as natural as breathing. You will be keeping them without question, without challenge, without your own decision. Love God any way you can. It's not a test. It's not a mountain to climb. And it's not a ladder of loves. Amen.